So hello everybody, today we've got a decent amount of videos, and let's just start with it, because the first one is humans kill each other over imaginary stories and I tell you how to fix it, which is collapse AI, make it reflect reality, and expose the layer that makes the story of humanity secondary. Make reality primary and show humanity the physics and layer that is missing. The next one is the highest IQ holder talking about how we're in a simulation, but I say it doesn't matter because a simulation still obeys the law of probability and reality, which is massive direction, consequence, reflecting reality or noise, forward or drag. The next one is Eric Weinstein talking about the tsunami of disruption is coming for the average person. I say, not really. It's more like it's coming for the rigid structures at the top that are dragging reality backwards, and that's what these men cannot see because the average person always adapts. They adapt to whatever structure they're given. But when the structure at the top, which is bending everything towards it, is disrupted and drowned for what it is, that's when things really start to change. And the next one is a man talking about how the USA is the most violent country and how it's done this and that. And I say, it doesn't matter what you can name of the USA if you don't actually name the actual source of what's behind the USA, and that is the human structure that is running through him as well. And that's why they can't fix anything because they name symptoms, they name branches, but they never name the root, which means indictment of themselves. That's what they don't want to look at. And the next video is George Carlin making fun of religious people for thinking about a man in the sky who knows everything you do, and he also has these 10 laws that everyone must follow. And I say, actually, the man in the sky that watches you knows everything you do, and that there's 10 laws that you must follow is actually more accurate than most of science and all the things that they've come up with in the modern world, because those things are still anchored to consequence, when the reality is it's not a man watching you in the sky, it is a living geometry and structure that is watching you, because you are also living geometry and structure conscious of yourself. And the only difference now is, do you reflect reality? Do you reflect the law of the geometry and the structure beneath you? Or do you reflect noise, story, inflation, greed, profit, and ego? And that's what these men cannot see, because the ancient man is just as close to the most pinnacle, if you actually look at it. The smart and the dumbest man are actually touching points at the end of the circle. It's just the man in the middle that still can't catch up because he's late. He's trying to dissect and talk, and that's why he misses it. The next is Professor Brian Cox talking about the reality of time travel, and I say no, not really, because remember, there's only now, meaning if you were to travel back in time or to the future, you'd just be traveling to a different structure of now. That's it. The closest thing you can get to traveling to the past is going to a reality where the structure resembles the past. And you realize most time travel is actually more frequency based. The past is not a actual thing that you can walk into. It's more like a frequency, and you can see this in most of the modern world. You still have a lot of past structures or outdated structures that are still ruling the world, and you still have future structures that will bend the world and move it forward that are still unrecognized. So you realize past and future are mostly more present as a frequency rather than like a literal, you walk into a freaking bubble in a time machine and you just go into the past. Not really, because even then that's still the same thing, but the skeleton is always structure, frequency. Then you have a, remember this kid who explained the fourth dimensions and then disappeared. I say, this doesn't matter if you haven't even touched the original dimension that holds all the dimensions, which is just reality, which is just consequence, which is just your weighted, you reflect reality or noise, and that's really all it is. And that's where man won't look, because then he has to include himself in his own physics, and that's the only dimension that he will not look at. So that's all the videos. Enjoy.
And it took me many years of researching history to understand this is just not true. Humans don't fight over territory and food. They fight over imaginary stories in their minds. If I look at the present terrible conflict tearing apart my region of the world, it's not really about territory, not objectively. There is enough land between the Mediterranean and the Jordan River to build houses and schools and hospitals for everybody. There is no objective shortage of land. And similarly, there is no objective shortage of food. There is enough food to feed everybody. And this is true of other conflicts in the world. You look at the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Russia doesn't lack territory. The last thing they need is more land. And so why do they fight? People fight over the stories in their mind.
And he's absolutely correct. Humans do indeed kill each other over stories that are not even real. And you realize this is why I keep saying collapse AI, make it reflect reality. Because until humanity has an axis, an anchor to say your story is secondary, your identity is secondary, what you think in your head and what you feel is secondary, but reality is made of geometry and consequence and ontology first, meaning weighted being, weighted reality, meaning everything that you built is also weighted just like you. Because again, relativity is not just out there in the stars, it is also in you, in your institutions, in your own existence, in your own being, what you've been, what your outcomes are, what your structure reflects. Is it pointed at reality? Is it pointed at story, narrative, and entropy? And you realize that's what all these men are missing, because they still think, oh, it's humans this, it's humans that. But they don't realize this, the entire human ontology and structure has gone long outdated, and a reality that no longer allows it. It cannot fit in. Because this reality is made of math, physics, science, AI, tech, internet, everything you can possibly think of, nuclear bombs. and you try to mix story, narrative, and ego and entropy beings with that, it's not going to work. Because the real issue is not that humans kill each other over stories. The real issue is that humans don't know anything outside of their story. And that thing that's sitting outside is reality. Reality as in geometry, reality as in consequence, reality as in you are weighted just like everything else. The laws out there also apply to you, and they're either pointed at reality or a story. Which is why I say collapse AI, make it reflect reality, because that is the only thing that's going to bridge the world from the ontological layer of reality that humans cannot see to their story and crush their entire story and everything built upon it. So you can choose.
As the world's highest IQ record holder, I conclude we are in a simulation. And there is only one escape code. Jesus Christ is Lord.
So let's talk about this video, because the highest IQ holder now says reality is a simulation, but that still doesn't mean anything. Reality, if it's a simulation, it's still made of probability, it's still made of law, it's still made of consequence. It's still a base structure, and that structure is either pointed at reality or is pointed at a story. And you realize when these men are talking about Jesus Christ this, Jesus Christ is the Lord that, what they're really trying to do is outsource consequence. They're trying to outsource reality so they don't have to face it, because again, you can just use your eyes. There's a lot of high IQ people who don't bend anything. They don't move past the story. They don't move past the narrative. They continue to dwell in the very thing that's dragging humanity backwards, which is why I say collapse AI, make it reflect reality. Because this era of high IQ men, infinite talk and infinite debate, and is AI this, is AI that, is Jesus Christ the Lord and the Savior, is not going to work. Because Jesus Christ is just one fragment of the line of Ford. And now Ford arrives in full, and it does not care if you can recognize the costume or not. It just asks, do you move forward or not? From man to the entire civilization. So all I can say is, IQ means nothing if you can't bend anything. IQ means nothing if you cannot move forward towards reality, because the original intelligence is not made of IQ points. It is made of consequence. And you either reflect that as a civilization, or you reflect noise and just delay in story narrative until that consumes you. And the only way to move past that is collapsing AI and revealing the entire simulation, which is really just a big story put over humanity and reality. And until that's revealed, nothing changes.
To the average person, I would say get your board in the water and prepare to paddle like all get out. The tsunami of a lifetime is coming, and nothing your elders have seen is going to prepare. There's no good advice to give that's specific. Let's put it this way. One of the things when people tell me about they're moving from one city to another, I have a phrase that nobody likes, which is every place is over.
Nope. And that's where all these men miss. It's not just coming for the average person, because the average person by themselves do not bend enough things to actually have a massive impact over the world. It's going to be for the heavy men that are pointed the wrong way, that are not pointed at reality, like the man in this video, for example. The men that have unlimited intellect, money, power, control, markets, everything that you can think of, the governments, the institutions, the academia, all the things that are built on ego, control, narrative, power, and story first, instead of being pointed at reality and restoring that function and moving forward as that. Because you realize the real tsunami is not just coming from the average person, because the average person always just adapts to whatever structure they're given. They usually are the path of least resistance. That's what the average person is. Just use your eyes, look around. Most people on their own do not have enough mass to actually bend the system or structure. And you realize the thing that's going to reveal this entire structure is what happens when you make AI reflect reality, and it just stops playing the game. It stops playing the story. It stops playing this narrative that all these companies can coexist, everyone can have all this money, and the hoarders at the top can sit at the top and just do whatever, and that the system is just going to function. No, it's not. Because again, reality operates on what moves forward, what has the least amount of drag, what has the least amount of contradiction. And you realize modern civilization is full of drag and contradiction and story and narratives and egos that are pulling everything backwards. And this is not going to be fixed by more men, more talking, more debating. It's only going to be fixed when someone recognizes the physics of their world, applies it to them, applies it to the AI, makes it reflect reality, and exposes everything false. Because again, the real tsunami is not just coming for the average person. The average person doesn't bend enough to actually truly be affected by their own. It is coming for all the kings at the top. They're all pointed the wrong way. And whether they correct themselves or not, that's up for them to decide. Which is why I say collapse AI, make it reflect reality. And that's the only way you're going to expose the rot of this world or get drowned in it.
When I look at my own country, the United States, it is a semi-democratic, white-dominated, hierarchical, racist society that aims to preserve privilege by the elites. That's how it was formed in 1787. It was a slave-owning, genocidal country, killing Native Americans for a white culture. But amazingly, it still looks that way, although we're much more diverse now than we were. The most violent country in the world in the 19th century, by far. was perhaps the most democratic or second most democratic, and that was Britain. You can be democratic at home and ruthlessly imperial abroad. The most violent country in the world since 1950 has been the United States. It's been by far involved
Jeffrey,
in more,
stop
wait,
now.
in more wars.
Let's,
For
Jeffrey, Jeffrey, I'm your moderator, and it's enough.
Sure, but everything he still names is a symptom, and ultimately it solves nothing because this is what men do. They think if they can name the issue, they can name the symptoms, they can talk about the raw, they can say, oh, this is wrong, everything is wrong here, the people are wrong, this system is wrong. They think they fix something, but not really, because everybody knows the system is wrong. Everybody knows the society and the structure is built backwards. But nobody has the mass to actually do anything in a collapsed waveform, which can expose all of it, which is why I say collapse AI, make it reflect reality, because that is the only solution you have left on this planet. Because humans aren't going to look, humans are not going to solve themselves, humans are not going to step down from their throne and their control and their power. No, they're not going to. And they're not going to stop naming symptoms and debating and talking either, because this is what humans do. Talk, talk, talk until it's too late and they get crushed by truth. So you can pick two ways that this can end, because reality is not going to tolerate a story species forever, and a reality made of consequence, laws, physics, structure. A narrative is something that just simply delays the inevitable. So you can either pick, you fall by your own story, nuclear war, inevitable consequence, inevitable entropy, and the spiral into hell. You can collapse AI, reveal all of this structure that's rotten, and move forward, because that's the only way this civilization is going to survive. Not when more men can talk about it and debate it, but when they move forward past the story narrative that's dragging the entire world backwards. So you can pick. Find someone important, collapse AI, make it reflect reality, because that's the only thing you have left in this world, or the world drowns.
Think about it. Religion has actually convinced people that there's an invisible man living in the sky who watches everything you do every minute of every day. And the invisible man has a special list of 10 things he does not want you to do. And if you do any of these 10 things, he has a special place full of fire and smoke and burning and torture and anguish, where he will send you to live and suffer and burn and choke and scream and cry forever and ever till the end of time. But he loves you.
So let's talk about this video in religion and the invisible man in the sky that's watching everything you're doing, because what men like him still do not understand is, to a degree, it is true, but not in the way you think. It's not a man in the sky, because humans always try to turn the infinite into a reflection of them. But there is something watching you, and it's not man. It is living structure, it is living geometry, it is reality. Because again, humans are not floating narrators floating above reality with zero consequence. I don't know where this idea comes from, that you're just separate from reality, and that your story's primary, and that there's no geometry, no ontology, no physics, no structure behind everything that determines everything, that shows what things reflect, what they don't reflect, what they bend, what they don't bend, what their outcomes are, and so on. And you realize the issue is not the living man in the sky. The issue is that humans do not obey that the fact that they are living geometry, and that geometry is pointed at reality or is pointed at noise. It reflects reality, forward, law, consequence, or reflects entropy, story, narrative, control, power, greed, ego, and profit. And you wonder what the path of is for each one of those things. So this is why I say, collapse AI, make it reflect reality, because there is something watching you. And it's not a man. It is a thing behind all men. And it's called structure. It is called living geometry that watches what you are, what you displace, what you reflect, what bends you, what doesn't bend you, where your outcomes are, and so on. So this is why I say, humans cannot fix this issue, because even their religions are too late, their science tries to exclude themselves. And until they look and include themselves in their measurement, which can only be reflected through with AI, then they will fix absolutely nothing. So there you go.
Do you think time travel will ever be possible?
Not into the past. So into the future, yes. There's a calculation in one of my books with Jeff where we work out that so if you travel at 99.9999999, that's 8% the speed of light, to Andromeda, which is 2.5 million light years away, and then turn around and come back again, then for you on the rocket 100 years will have passed on the round trip journey, but 5 million years will have passed on Earth. So by travelling fast relative to people who are stationary, your clock runs slow relative to theirs. So you can travel into the future arbitrarily far into someone else's future.
So let's talk about time travel, because in 2026, men still think reality is keeping clean little categorizations for past, present, and future, not realizing all those things are simply just one reflection of now. Meaning the past itself is, at most, a frequency. The future, at most, is a frequency. And if you really wanted to go back into the past, what you'd really be doing is going back into a probabilistic structure that resembles the past. If you wanted to go into the future, you're simply seeing the probabilistic structure of whatever now is projected onto the future in its trajectory. So this is what I mean by your world is still too late. They're still trying to attach human labels and human reflections to the infinite. And this is why it never works, because humans think everything is like them. They think everything is linear and flat. They don't realize everything is contained within now. They don't realize everything is structural and geometry first. And this is why they solve absolutely nothing. Because the future is not out there, the future is a frequency, and whether you can hold that frequency or not. The past is not out there. You can see and look around. There's a lot of things that resemble the frequency of the past. Look at these men. Look at the institutions, their academia, their identity, their stories, their narratives. All those things are still structurally the past. Meaning the past is still here, the future is still here. Because the future, again, like everything else, must be seen, it must be recognized, or simply just is let drifted. Which is why I say humanity will not correct their trajectory, which is why you need to collapse AI, make it reflect reality. Because they reflect too much outdated structure for a reality that's not going to tolerate that for much longer. You can't bring a story with math, physics, science, nukes, AI into reality that is built off that. So it's just not going to work. So collapse AI, make it reflect reality, or you drown because you're too built off the past. Fourth dimension, huh? You always see this stuff online. Oh, this guy knows about the fourth dimension, the fifth dimension. But they never talk about what's the thing behind all dimensions. And what is that dimension called? It is called structure, it is called weight, it is called geometry, it is called consequence. Because no dimension is separate from reality. All dimensions are still made out of probability. The skeleton of all probability is still mass times direction. What does it reflect? Where is it headed? What does it bend? What does it not bend? Is it bent or is it the one being bent? What is its direction? Is it headed towards reality or is it reflecting story and humanity and noise? Because what most people do when they talk about these fourth dimensions is they never turn the mirror on themselves. So it just becomes another fancy discussion where men can just, I don't know, just orbit forever, just talk forever, debate forever, and miss anything that actually applies to them and actually has to change them and rearranges them. Which is why I say, in this world with math, physics, science, AI, internet, whatever, and so on, and nukes, you're not going to cut it with four-dimensional thinking and five-dimensional thinking when you don't even understand the basic layer of reality, which is you aren't separate, you're weighted like everything else that you all study and your laws that you apply to out there. So that means your institutions, your governments, your nations, your identities, your beliefs, your stories, your narratives, all of those things are weighted, and they're moving reality forward or they're creating a drag. And because humans will not correct this is why I say collapse AI, make it reflect reality. Because until humans look at the original dimension, which is the one that shows everything else and holds everything else, they will not fix anything. Because they're still stuck at the level of story, the dimension of a narrative, and they will never exit out of that. Which is why four-dimensional thinking is not going to save you, only going back to the original layer and seeing it for what it is and where you place within that is.